Hello, hello,
¿Qué
hello, hello.
tal?
Hello, hello. Hey, did
Muy
you?
bien. I'm
Uh,
sorry. Go ahead.
oh,
No,
I'm
it's all right.
sorry.
Go.
No, you were here and I got excited.
Luis,
Hello.
let me, I don't know, I know you guys have been talking on LinkedIn, but let me
We have.
formally or informally introduce Julia, Luis,
Hello.
Luis,
Nice to meet
Julia.
you.
I, uh, I met Luis. He reminded me the last time we talked, in 2011, I got to speak at IBM's 100th anniversary.
Oh,
Yep,
cool.
that's correct.
It was
Yeah.
just strange that I got invited, but lucky. And I had a great time. And, can you imagine that the people that are invited to that? It's just this huge crowd from around the world. So it was really fun.
And
Awesome.
and what Carmen doesn't tell you, Julia, is as a result of that presentation that she did talking about rebels at work and heretics and outliers and the change makers, I am what I am today because of that particular presentation that
Of
had that
course.
particular influence in terms of saying, yeah, that's the kind of troublemaking that I want to do from here onwards. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Well, let us introduce Luis to our Pandas viewing audience. And
Well, hold
Luis,
on, hold on.
what?
Are you introducing him again because you think that we're going to cut out that story about how you changed Luis's life?
Oh,
Because
no.
we're
It's just
not doing that.
we'll get into this long conversation and then we'll go, oh my God, we forgot to introduce
But she
Luis
knows.
Suarez.
She knows that already. I mean, I told her. I think a couple of times, even when we met in Madrid and we had beers in Madrid.
Yeah, that's right.
That presentation, and actually, I have used it all the time about how, depending on the context of where you're navigating organizations, there's a lot of free space that you can maneuver to understand where your limits are. And it's when you start entering that, how much of a heretic or change maker can be, or a rebel of work at work, and not necessarily that you want to destroy the organization, but that you want to provoke certain things to take place, right? And when I tell people and I reference that, and I tell people like, yeah, like watch that, and then come back and tell me what you think, and they'll go like, yeah, I know what you mean now.
All right,
That's
let's
great.
formally introduce Luis. You're right. We do
So,
get talking and then we
yeah, we forget
Okay.
completely. So,
Yeah, no, it's a good thing though. Anyway, so
yeah,
let's formally introduce Luis.
Julia, and our special guest today, and I don't mean to stress too much importance or put too much importance on issues such as sex and gender, but you are going to be our first guest of the male persuasion.
Wow.
Is that?
I don't need this kind of pressure.
Too
But I
bad. You
will
already
tell
got
you
it.
that you're going to be followed up by at least a couple more, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. But so
Well,
anyway,
it's a true honor and a privilege for me to be
oh,
here, and just to even be on the show. So because I mentioned to you guys as well how I've been watching, not all of them, but a good number of them, and boy, it's like, yeah, all I
we
can say.
appreciate that, Luis. And
We'll have to get to the
Luis,
bottom of what this means, though.
Yeah,
you,
we will unpack it in the conversations. Don't
Yeah.
worry.
I'll confess that I'm not exactly clear on your life journey. I was going to
Okay.
say career path, but I really think we need to stop using phrases like that.
Okay.
But
Mhm.
my impression is that you've been doing a lot of IT work, hence you were at the IBM event. But more recently, you were much more interested in sort of collaboration and human and work design. Is that fair, or how would you correct me?
Um, no, I won't. I wouldn't correct you. I will basically try to say that because everyone feels that I have got an IT background, and I don't. I happen to be on the wrong place at the wrong time for the right opportunity for someone who comes from the humanities space. I'm actually an English teacher, not an IT, and frankly, I can say this to you folks. I hate technology. And we can dive into that topic as you may see fit. So I don't have an IT career whatsoever. However, to your point, and that was how I started. I come from the area, from the space of collaboration and knowledge management and learning and online communities. And I started using what was known then social digital tools back in 2000. So, blogs and wikis and everything else. And all in all, I have been in that space now for 27 years. which I think, and I realize that it's a lot of time, but I also tell people about how little we have changed in those 27 years in terms of not necessarily technology that has gotten better, obviously, but in terms of our behaviors, in terms of our mindset, in terms of our thinking and habits and ways of doing work, we haven't changed really much all throughout time. So I keep telling people that we are like on the tip of the iceberg of what's possible that we haven't realized yet, right? Now, those 27 years, I did 18 of them at IBM. That's how I met Carmen. Watching a presentation, not necessarily face-to-face. I would have loved to have been there like face-to-face kind of thing. And then from the last nearly a decade, I've been working on my own, helping organizations understand how we need to do things perhaps a little bit better in terms of working smarter, not necessarily harder, when using technologies to collaborate, share knowledge, and relate to one another, especially when we may no longer be collocated in the same office, which is that whole space around remote work, hybrid work, distributed work. Where I have been doing distributed work myself for 23 years now. So when people tell you, oh yeah, I discovered remote work as a result of the pandemic, and I go like, yeah, tell me about it. And then people tell me like, oh, but where technology is back then? I say, yeah, a mobile phone. That happened to be a brick, by the way, and a laptop that weighed like 5 kilos. I could not do many things, you know. We didn't have video stuff, you know. And they go like, how do you get work done? I say, well, we did it. So that's a bit of the context of how I got into that space around collaboration and knowledge management and learning, and how I eventually bumped into the work that you did at that IBM event, right?
That's great.
And it's interesting, you know, it's interesting, and I should mention that because when I watched the video where you were talking about rebels at work and heretics and everything, I felt that and I'm looking forward to, you know, listeners to your show and how they would relate to it. But I think that time when you did that presentation, without probably realizing, you gave a name and a mission to a lot of people who were doing a lot of this stuff back then already and continue to do today, but we didn't know how to call it. And you succinctly said, this is what these people are made of and what they're capable of and how they're going to help the organization, you know, leap into the next frontier kind of thing, right? So for that, thank you.
I appreciate that very much, Luis, but it would be wrong for me not to acknowledge, which we did a couple of shows ago when we had the co-author, my co-author, our co-author,
Lois, yeah.
Lois, on the show with us, that she's actually the one that came up with the phrase "rebels at work." Or after she heard me speak, she goes, "How come nobody helps? Nobody helps rebels at work." So it's her baby.
So Lois, if you're listening, thank you to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know she listens actually. My other favorite factoid about Luis, and it's such because he's the only person I know who lives on Las Islas Canarias, the Canary Islands. And
Correct.
Luis, you know, San Antonio, where I am right now, was settled by 15 familias canarias who came
Correct.
from there must have been late 1600s, early 1700s. I just finished with a week of wonderful house guests that kept me very busy. And one of the places we visited is this place called San Pedro Springs Park, which is the second oldest park in the United States, public park, and was the actual site of the original settlement of Las Familias Canarias, because San Pedro Springs is named after a live spring that provides water there. So
right.
I am threatening to visit Luis sooner rather than later.
Although I must say that the folks who actually founded San Antonio were from one of the neighbor islands. So I live in Gran Canaria. So those folks were actually from La Palma, if I recall correctly, which is the most western island of the archipelago, right?
Wow,
They know it as the beautiful island, kind of. Yeah, it's about maybe an hour short flight, right?
Very good.
But it has been always that a strong connection between, you know, parts of the south of the US and Central America and South America and the Canaries for historical reasons. not just, with the settlements, but also with migration, fast forward into, the early 20th century and everything. So when we actually got together and we discussed that, I thought like, yeah, we probably, if we dig in, we're maybe even cousins or something.
Right. Because, those Islas Canarias, a lot of people that settled Puerto Rico and much of the Caribbean
Correct.
were from there.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Carmen,
Absolutely.
have we
Absolutely.
told Luis about the hosting requirement?
The hosting requirement.
Oh,
What's
okay,
that
we
requirement?
haven't. So Luis, there's a rule for all the men on our show that if you come on our show and you live in a nice place, you have
Oh,
to host us whenever you want, whenever we want to appear.
Oh, you're more welcome. That you're more.
Great.
I mean, I know. Carmen probably, will be. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what the weather is like for Carmen usually, but if you are having a bit of a, freezing winter, now is probably the best time to come over and visit. So I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine from Canada, and he was telling me that there were like -9, -10. I go, and that's not too bad. I thought like, my God, that's compared to the 24 degrees Celsius that we have here. That's not the kind of cold that I want to. So you're more than welcome to come over this time of the year, from January till March, April,
Thank you. I
skip
just
in the
wanted to get an
winter,
invitation out of that.
Yes, you
well,
will,
luckily,
and more than happy to.
luckily, I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be going to Puerto Rico on at the end of the month, on the 27th. So it will feel very nice after a tough winter, even here.
Yeah, and regaining that light and the sunshine and the warmth. That's
Oh,
that's
it'll feel
eventually.
amazing.
The interesting thing is that, Carmen knows me from being and living in the Canary Islands, but I'm actually not from here. I'm from northwest of Spain, to a place called León, which is on the way to Galicia, right? To the Camino, as they call it, right? And that's the winters over there, they're brutal. So at one point in time, after traveling all over Europe and everything else, I decided to go back home, but to the sun and the warmth, which is why I decided to come over to the Canaries. And
Nice.
Well,
next
I
month it
believe
will be 20 years. So
I think
I
we
believe
should
my
talk. Okay.
mother's parents are from, or family was from Galicia, because her maiden name was Aponte, and that is a very Galician kind of name.
same,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So where I used to live is like about right next border to it.
Very
I think we
cool.
should talk about this concept of scouring the world that happens when you're an adult and you have the capacity, if you have the capacity to sort of be in the world and say, where do I actually want to put myself? And trying to find a place that feels like warmth, whether that's physical or spiritual or whatever, that feels like it holds you in a way that's familiar. I don't know. I have a feeling that that might be interesting to talk about. Am I right? I don't know.
No, it is, but it wasn't like that before. And I think that part of that conversation also relates to our lifetime. So many moons ago, when I was a lot younger, I pictured myself living in a different country, in a much more populated city, so like a big metropolis. And I actually attempted to do that. For me, at the time, it was London, right? But life showed me, no, you're not going to be living here for long, so better start making the move. And I eventually continued to live in a number of other different European countries, in Germany, in Ireland, and then I ended up living in the Netherlands for 7 years. And I thought that that was going to be my home, kind of thing, right? But then life told me, no, it's not. Sorry, you need to go back to where you enjoy the sunshine and the warmth. And again, at one point in time here, probably that the concept of home is how you relate to the environment and what you like. I mean, I know a lot of people, they will tell you that they love the passing of the seasons as part of their home experience, being in the household and being able to experience 4 seasons. I'm not. I decided to stick around with the eternal spring, and that's what I'm sticking around with, right? And my body, my physical body, is very grateful for that, because and the thing is, and people tell me, yeah, but you don't know what it's like being in the cold. I say, oh, I know. When I lived in Germany, -30 degrees Celsius. When I lived in the Netherlands, -20. So I do know what cold is. You don't have to tell me that. And
But I think it impacts
somehow
your mood. I mean, I think it
it
impacts
does.
your
Oh,
mood in
well,
particular.
not necessarily the cold, but actually the light, the
Yes.
Yeah.
sunlight.
Yeah.
To me, that was, when I was living in the Netherlands, And actually, you know, the first 2 years when I started working at IBM, I had to commute to the office every day. And that was like 2.5 hours coming and going. So 5 hours per day. So when people tell me that I don't know anything about commute, I thought, oh, hold on. I know a thing or two, you know, that's 5 hours every day traveling just to get to work and from work, right? But I realized that during those 2 years, I never got to see the actual sunlight because I was living home in the dark and I was coming home in the dark. And my office was a cubicle indoors. So we didn't have windows or anything, right? And at one point in time, I noticed how much not having that sunlight, that sunshine was affecting my mood, the way I was eating, the way I was behaving to others, and how I was starting to then escape for my holidays to sunny places, which is why I ended up going on vacation to my own country, which is crazy because you will go like, why would you go to your own country on vacation when you have got all sorts of other countries? And my answer was the sky, the blue skies, the sunshine, the warmth. That's what I was missing because I was affecting my mood, right? And after a number of years of coming here on vacation, I decided to move here permanently because of that. And it does, I feel that it does affect not just the mood, but also how you relate to others, right? Because I remember when I first came over here to live, and you know, I was living in a relatively smaller village in the south of the island. And it was crazy how, you know, people on the streets, they would stop you and they would say, hey, how are you? How you doing? You know, and I would go and look back and say, like, are you talking to me? I said, like, yeah, no one else, right? I say, yeah, but why? You know, I'm
You
not
don't
used
know
to those
me.
things. No, but it's that's how much it affects you that, you know, when I was living in the Netherlands, it took me years to get to know my neighbors.
Yeah.
And now total strangers on the street, they were greeting me with a smile, saying like, hey, hello, how are you? We know that, you know, you're new and everything. And I go like, yeah, it must be the weather.
I think you were right about the light. I know this guy who I think his name is Jonathan Dinsmore, who studies how experiences of transcendence are related to experiences of light. I mean, just cross-culturally, they're like, and then I saw the light, and this is my North Star, and then the light came into my heart. Or
Mm.
there's something about, there's something that we don't yet understand
Oh, that's how
about,
Genesis essentially
yeah.
starts. Story of
Well,
the
first
Bible.
there was the
Let
word,
there
right?
be. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, yeah. Sorry,
It's
as a Jew,
interesting.
I always point out the word first because
No, no,
that's,
no, no. But you know, it speaks volumes about how plenty of the traveling around that we do is also, I mean, obviously maybe not when it's work related, but when it's actually you know, pleasure driven traveling, how much that's also directed by light. Because when,
yeah.
you know, and I see that, you know, I live where I live, right? And through this winter months, we get literally all of Europe hibernating here,
It's like a
right? So different.
pilgrimage to light is,
Yeah,
yeah,
it is. But
yeah.
it's not. And the funny thing is that it starts with 1 or 2 weeks, and then it becomes 2 months, and then
Okay,
three
but how do
months,
we
and then
do,
four
how do we
months.
take like the pilgrimage to light and make that something that people can do in their organizations? I mean, just to switch gears for a
Uh-huh.
second,
Yeah,
right? Like people
Hmm.
also get sick of lack of light in their organizations,
absolutely.
right? And how could there be like a, how can I go to my same country and have blue skies? How can I go to my own organization and have a pilgrimage to light? All right, Luis, how?
Well, I think
Um,
just to build on that, I think that sadly there are many organizations, I'm not going to say most, but many people who or organizational leaders who would rather that their employees work in the dark, i.e., that they only know what the organization wants them to see and nothing else. So I'll just throw that in there.
and I will add on to that, and I will say that probably part of the reason why we may not have that related to light is because a lot of organizations, and by that I mean a lot of people, love to suck the light out of everyone else and keep them in the dark,
They
right?
usually don't know they're doing it. It's not usually nefarious.
Well, it's but
Well,
they know
okay,
they're
I guess
doing it. No, no, no.
not
Hang on.
everyone, not everyone.
I feel. No, hang on.
Okay.
I think that they know they're doing it because when you take the light out of others, you're also taking away their power to be their selves, to be self-empowered, to make certain decisions, to have their personal agency. So by keeping people on purpose in the dark, you actually basically force them to behave in ways that are not natural for them, right?
But it also
So
hurts you. It also reduces your power. I mean, that's why I'm saying that
true,
I don't think
true.
it's necessarily
But the thing
conscious.
is that, and this is what annoys me a little bit from the whole thing, is that we have taken that as a given of something that we need to suffer from because work needs to be painful.
Yeah.
Can
Exactly.
I swear on this show? No, probably
Yes,
not.
yes,
Oh,
I'm gonna
yes.
keep
please,
my.
You
we
may,
have done it
please
before.
do.
That's fucked up, and excuse my
Yes.
French, right? But that's exactly what's happening.
How
Is
many
that we seem
languages can you say that in, by the way?
Yes, please.
far too many to recall. Thank you.
Yes,
No, no, no,
please. I
please.
don't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
6.
Let's hear them.
No, no, but you know, what I find fascinating from that whole notion is that it bothers me when people tell us that we need to do ugly stuff at work because someone needs to do it. Someone needs to be exposed. We don't need to do the toxic things or whatever. We need to put up with the toxic people, right? We need to have those that, you know, take our light out because that's work. You know, work is supposed to be labor, painful. I thought like, no, it's not.
Right.
It's what we have been told that we need to because it's the best way to have you under control.
Yeah.
Is the easiest way to crowd control eventually, right? And then when you start, and that's one of the things that I know, I'm sorry, but it brings me back to these rebels at work, is when you realize that you're being dragged out of your own light into dark, and then you say like, no, stop, I don't want to do that. And that's
Right.
when you're perceived as the outlier, the, you know, heretic or the rebel at work. And you go like, no, 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 no. It's reclaiming my own personal agency, my own humanity, my own light to be who I can be
Right.
in the organization. So to Julia's point, so what can we do to bring that? Is one of the things that I keep telling people is find those linchpins, those folks who have decided that they want to have their own light with whatever the cost that comes with it, and build a movement around them with them, so
Right.
so that light can become more powerful, and eventually you go against the tide before you realize that you become the tide, you become that light, right? To me, there's a big issue with our inability to want to challenge the status quo of how certain things happen, right? And to let inertia be a powerful motivator along with fear. And how do you do that? How do you tackle those issues? By bringing your own light. But if you know that other people have been brave enough and courageous to do that leap forward, it becomes easier because you no longer have the feeling that you're alone in this. You're no longer the weirdo. You're no longer the one who conforms with everyone else. You're no longer the one who, you know, puts up with shitty work because, hey, your boss tells you that you need to do that shitty work. No, no, we shouldn't be doing that, right? And it's, to me, what I keep telling people when I work with different organizations is you need to be able to find your light with those folks who have already decided that they no longer want to be the cogs of the machine as that they want to reclaim their own humanity, their own light within the organization, right? And well, I think that, you know, on the presentation, you also talked about, if I recall correctly, Carmen, the free radicals, right? Now, free radicals can be positive, but they can also be very negative,
Right.
right? So it's how do you juggle with that energy? That's the magic for organizations. So how you can turn that free radical into good as opposed to destroy the organization, because that free radical, that rebel at work can destroy the organization if he wants to, if that person wants to, right?
But does that,
But
but let's talk, can we talk a little about dancing with that energy or dancing with
yeah,
that light? Because it feels to me that being, I guess I have two branching things to say here. So one is that being a person who envisions that for herself, I know that when I'm in an environment where I could say frankly, this is what's going on. I'm calling out what I see.
mhm,
I see that this organization does need to change, but I also see that there's resistance to it. And I also see, you know, just being in an environment where you could just say those words without being fired, or maybe
mhm,
being fired, but like say those words as you're going out the door and have them heard by someone who's can do something with them. That is the way to create a safe container for this light and to make the light build, almost like a light bulb is a container for this, the light that is happening, but it's also protecting the outside from, you know, getting a shock. So that's an important piece of this in terms of how to. But the other important piece of this I think is to remember this came into my head, and it is Martin Luther Jr. King
It is Martin Luther Jr. King
King
Day
Day.
here in the United States. Yes.
And
Mhm,
he has
mhm.
this great statement that I took a picture of and I pulled it up because it's on his memorial in DC. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. In other words, you're not on the winning side if your only activity that you could do is pull out other people's light. That actually diminishes you, because no one actually feels good unless they're able to have their light shine freely. So it diminishes you and it diminishes the other person. And so the only way to actually win, like if you want to think about this as a game where you can win, the only way to
Mhm.
actually win is to support light, and yet
Yeah, but
protect the surround from sort of the harshness of what can happen when that light, it can be tied in with like egoic ventures, right? Like, I want to take down this company, and this is my light, and it's like, or this organization, it's like, that's an egoic venture. That's not about the light. It's about co-opting this idea
So I've
to
never
try to
heard that phrase
drive
before.
change.
I've never heard that phrase before,
I
Juliet.
just made it up.
Well, but I like it. Egoic venture. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
but in so here's an interesting point, Julia, because if you look into the current state of the workplace in general, I wouldn't say that it's a positive workplace in itself, right? I mean, if you look into the levels of overwhelming, of exhaustion, of depression, of non-motivation, not being motivated or
Do you mean
involved or
like on
whatever.
average? You mean on average is
On
that's
average, if you look,
yeah.
if I, for instance, there's one piece of a study that I always look every single year, which is the research that Gallup does on the so-called concept of employee engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of the last 23 years, it's been appalling how the
Yeah.
number of the percentage of engaged employees, so people who are committed to bring that light to the workplace, worldwide is a meager 15% on average, right? So that means that there are 85% of the active working population whose light has been taken out by whoever. Probably, we all know who this whoever is, right? And then the actual question that I have, or reflection that I have, is that whoever, I don't think that they want to give people light to shine at the workplace, because right now the current status quo is working for them really well,
Yeah.
right?
So I think, Julia, I mean, I agree with you that from a physics point of view, it does make you weaker to kind of be a vampire. Eventually that's problematic, but they don't know that.
Right.
They just
Right.
haven't internalized that. And the one thing I
Right.
also wanted to add,
Agree.
Louise,
Agree.
since you mentioned employee engagement, I once wrote a thought piece for Deloitte where I noted that the percentage of employees who felt engaged at work was actually lower than the percentage of Americans who believed zombies were real. And so
Well, that's why zombies are
But
so popular, is because
but
people
here's
we should have zombies at work is the next book.
but here's I actually think we have them, right?
Yeah.
yes,
And
exactly.
they're usually attached to these devices.
Yes. Uh-huh.
No, but what is interesting that I wanted to also add in here is because we're talking about on the topic of employee engagement, about disengaged employees. But then if you look into these Gallup studies, there's also a significant percentage of actively disengaged employees. So
Yes.
people who on purpose want
Mhm.
to take the light of those who have it, so that they will feel like, hey, you're part of our tribe, you're part of our group. You shouldn't be happy. You shouldn't be bringing the light to workplace. You shouldn't be doing your best work, because otherwise you stand out. We don't. We're the ones suffering, because we're no longer the ones who get, salary promotions, salary raises, whatever it is, right? So
Right.
they
But
actually work their ass off through corporate politics or whatever BS to diminish the ability of those people.
that's absolutely, I mean, there's no argument here. It's just the question is why? And my answer to why is that someone did that to them, and that's what they know to do. That's how they know to do it. And so I want to have love for them. I want to have forgiveness for them because, I mean, to me, it's like the same question of like, why did white people beat slaves? How did that occur to them? Well, someone did that to them. I mean, no one is off the hook here for their behavior. And at the same time, it really helps bring in the love to help understand that all of this comes from trauma and neglect and bad experiences that have not been healed.
Julia's
And
mission in life, if I may be so presumptuous, Julia's mission in life, at least one of them, is to break this cycle, the cycle that she just described. And to the extent that I can, I'm happy to give her more traction or to help her gain more traction in breaking this cycle. But I, consider myself a realist, a whimsical realist. Is that a category?
That's a
Yes.
fantastic category.
A whimsical realist. And
Very good.
I know that to win the battle, I mean, the lid on the trash can has to be absolutely tight. You cannot let one iota of that bad energy escape, or it will attempt to start the reconquest. So it's a tough battle.
Yeah, but it is a tough battle, and Julia, I'm with you, on your team, please, like, bring me in, because I think
Sure.
that we desperately
Bring me into your
need
team.
that,
Let's do it together.
right? But I feel that if you look into how organizations used to be X amount of years ago, decades ago, the workplace was not like it is today, right? I mean, I'm not going to say that it was like really healthy, but it was definitely healthier, and more towards the respect of the employee, and who they were and their well-being and everything else. And I think that part of the reasons why we don't have that nowadays, and at least 3 areas that I think we probably all need to get a lot better on, is when we are in the workplace, is to be kind to people. We gave up on being kind to people, right? Because we seem to think that everyone has got a hidden agenda. So why should I be on the, be kind front or whatever, when I know that that person then will use that against me?
They're
kind
just
of
going
thing,
to take
right?
advantage of me.
Right. So that's one of them. Second one, we need to be more caring for the others, right? We don't care anymore about the others. I mean, I keep reading year after year how we seem to be in the current workplace that is the least caring, and the third one, least empathetic in our entire human history. We no longer have empathy for people. We no longer seem to think like, hey, geez, I wonder why such person or this colleague is not delivering or working on whatever thing. What's in their mind? What's happening in their lives? Are they having trouble or whatever? We stop doing that. We stop caring and having empathy for people. And that reflects on not being kind to others. So it feels like this rat race about, I need to keep on top of whatever is happening, because if I don't, then I'm going to be suffering the consequences from everything else. And then when people tell me, okay, so how do we bring that back? Well, my question is, who are the groups of people who have the influence to set the corporate culture and the direction of the corporate culture and the organization, to set that example? And when you look into those groups, which are usually senior managers, senior leaders, you see that they stop caring for one another, they stop being empathetic with one another, and they stop being kind to one another. So that reflects on the entire organization.
They don't model it as an organizational value. And they
Shouldn't
don't.
they?
Of course they should.
They should.
No,
So why it's not
yeah, no,
happening?
duh. Well, but I mean, it's not a quick fix, right? Because
No, definitely
they're
not.
coming from fear, right? They have
Right.
internally an unacknowledged system that says, if I don't do this, I'm not going to get ahead. If I don't do this, then I'll be seen X, Y, and Z. I'll be seen as weak, right? And so you have to start from the radical other side of things, it seems
Wow,
to
you
me.
just gave me, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you just gave me this fantastic meme or thought, which is that one of the things that I hate to use the word leader, but I'm just going to use it now, but that real leaders are not afraid to appear weak.
No, of
Because
course not.
that a fear of appearing weak is
Not-
what prevents them from doing more humane things. It's
Well,
just so ridiculous.
or making any good decision.
Yeah.
So actually, I mean, let's just expand that a little. A good leader, an excellent leader, isn't worried about how they appear at all.
I can't agree completely with that, because a good leader understands all the little things that make an impression on people.
They
One of
do,
my
but they're not
favorite,
afraid of it. They're not afraid of it. You see, I mean, they're aware
no,
of
no,
it,
they're aware that they're aware of how easily they can give off the wrong impression
right? But they're not
or
afraid of
create
it.
the wrong perception.
But we have this idea that the way that you keep yourself safe from something is to be afraid of it. So I'm going to monitor, I'm going to be hyper vigilant about this thing, and that's going to make it so that it doesn't happen. But in fact, the hypervigilance, the anxiety, the fear makes you less safe from that very thing.
So I wanted to say something about sort of a theory of why we're less kind at work in the modern era. And then, only because we're more than halfway through our assigned hour, and as usual, we have completely rehearsed this and we know exactly where we're going, and we never do. I did want to save some time so we could talk about Luisa's latest venture on trying to encourage more collaboration and sort of create a platform for that. But on the topic of why we are less kind, I think that it reflects something that's gone wrong in modern societies, and loss of community, loss of meaning, loss of connective tissue, which makes me sad. And I particularly note this. There's a YouTube channel that I love to watch called Itchy Boots. Now, I don't know if anyone has seen it. It's got more than 2 million viewers. It's a Dutch female motorcyclist who goes around the world by herself on her motorcycle. Right now, she is in sub-Saharan Africa. And I just watched it this morning. She's in Cameroon, and it rains a lot in Cameroon. Anyway, she has any number of misadventures. Her bike gets stuck in the mud or whatever, and the passerbys, the poorest people you can imagine, stop and help her. I mean, get completely covered in mud to help her get that motorcycle out of the ditch. And it happens over and over and over again. And I just can't help but contrast this inherent bias toward helping each other that exists, that must exist in less modernized societies for the people to survive, and how that has been weakened by modernity. And I just remembered one other thing. There was a study, and I won't remember the details, and I don't know that I can find it, but someone maybe 10 years ago did a study trying to figure out why humans remain altruistic. In other words, from an evolutionary perspective, shouldn't the selfish gene triumph over all? But it hasn't, because altruism survives. And so the theory that they posited, which I found credible, believable, was that sure, an individual may survive by being selfish, but communities made up of selfish individuals die, because the only way a community can continue from one generation to the next is if there are altruistic, a significant number of altruistic people in it. So I thought, as always the optimist, because optimism is the greatest act of rebellion, and that is my line, okay. And forgive me for that, patting myself on the back. I really want us to get to this better place, and it's very meaningful for me. So yes, go ahead, Luis.
No. I was going to say, finish off your thought. If I interrupted you, apologies.
No, I was just about to switch to your
I
work
think
on collaboration. Go ahead.
I think no, hang on. I think I know the research that you're talking
Oh,
about altruism trumping, the
mhm.
selfish gene, right?
I think it's
There's this,
agent-based model. I think, right? Are we talking about the same thing? It's a bunch of agent-based models where they showed altruism actually winning out with you have to have a
well, I
certain
think
percentage of like helpers. If you don't have a certain percentage of helpers, it
it
doesn't.
reminds me, going back to this topic, it reminds me of a book that I read a while ago called Super Cooperators, right?
Ah,
By Martin Nowak and someone
Cool.
else, that actually claims that by nature, in our DNA, we're natural born cooperators.
Of course we
So
are.
the reason why we have survived for so many thousands or couple of million years is because at the end of the day, we know that if we don't stick with one another and we help one another selfishly, we die as a species, right? So
right.
we're true born cooperators in a way. However, what has happened over the last few decades is that we have decided that it was a good thing to compete against one another as opposed to help one another. However, when you remove that competition or that competitive urge, we eventually help one another, like you mentioned with Ichi Boots, right? Where if she's in need because she gets stuck or whatever, people, total strangers, they will come forward. This is something, one of my favorite, in the space of knowledge management, this is something that I have confirmed for myself for the last 27 years, and it doesn't come from me. Dave Snowden first quoted it, where we cannot, it's humanly impossible for us to deny help from others if we know how to help them.
Mm,
We cannot not do that, if I can say that. So if someone is in need and we know how to help, we don't know how to say no. We just don't.
interesting.
It's not in
Yeah,
our genes,
yeah.
right? So when talking about knowledge sharing, so if someone is asking you a question and you have that knowledge, it's impossible for you to say, no, I won't share it, right? But yet, incentives that are in place in the workplace motivate us because of competition to withdraw that, right? So
Mm.
and earlier on, you mentioned
Oh
something
my
about
God, yes, yes.
and earlier on, Julia mentioned something which is what should be our conversation as a society, right? Because you see a lot of online, I see a lot of people talking and writing about we need to be more human at the workplace, and I go like, no, no, we don't need to be human. We need to be humane, which is different. Because humans, you get the good and the bad. But humane, as far as I know, nothing goes wrong with humane because it's
That's
when it brings that kindness, it's when it brings that caring, it's when it brings that cooperation, that empathy. Why? Because you have that humane feeling for others as a species, right? So if anything, what we need is more humane
right.
organization, a more humane workplace. And to tie it in all together, um, how do we bring more humane or more of that humanity, more of that human into the workplace? By something that Carmen mentioned earlier on and hinting, which is what we no longer have that we should have, which is community.
Mm-hmm.
We should have community as an organizing principle, not a top-down command and control hierarchy that only serves a specific group of people and then the rest is just like the cogs in the machine. We should be thinking about community as an organizing principle where the communities themselves, they self-organize. They have a structure, they have a purpose, they have a vision, they have a scope, right? But they self-organize on the kind of work that they do because they are passionate about that kind of work.
Right.
Now, if you go to the workplace and you ask people, I don't know, you ask 10 people, how passionate are you from 1 to 10? I doubt that people will go beyond 4. And yet, when you ask them about the local communities or the communities that they're part of that may be related to work or not, they will tell you that they are on a scale of 15 above 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that being more humane relates a lot to how we have lost our touch with community, to have that a stronger sense of purpose and that stronger sense of belonging to other fellow humans so that they give us a bigger purpose of existence. We don't have that in the workplace. We have it in a societal point of view. For instance, when you think about activism, when you think about movements that started, especially the last few years, because of how certain things are run, um, and that's probably what we should also add into the workplace. Why is not that employee activism as powerful as it could be within the workplace? That
Luis,
fascinates me as a topic. Go ahead.
it feels like I mean, everything you're saying makes absolute sense to me, but I feel like you actually have a way to turn, because of your collaborative platform that Carmen was just speaking about, you actually have an answer to this. So you say this is how it should be, but you actually have a way to get there. And would you be willing to talk about that?
Well, to me, it all started last summer. Last summer, I was looking for new work. So I finished my last client project, and I obviously need to look for my next adventure. And summer being a relatively quiet period of time with everyone's on vacation, I spent the entire summer talking to people, right? July and August, having dozens of conversations with different people. And one of the things that I realized is a lot of what we have discussed today. How, whenever I was talking to people about what working away from the office meant for them, like distributed work, right? So remote work or hybrid work, you could see the spark on their eyes. You could see like how they were excited because something for them clicked, right? They were happier, they were more content, they were spending more time with the family, they were spending, more time for themselves, and they no longer had to commute or to travel so extensively. So they felt that they eventually were given their best work on their terms, right? And yet, as the summer was fading and we came into September and everything else, the spark died when they were telling me, oh, by the way, my boss wants me to go back to the office starting September. And I go like, how does that make you feel? I say, well, it makes me feel horrible because then I will lose everything that I have had over the course of the last few months, right? And these are people who are, the folks that I talk to, there are a lot of folks who are on that point of their career where they no longer have to conform to build a career. They're already there, and yet they were afraid of that sense of having I'm going to lose everything that I have built, that I have finally have on my terms, right? And I started seeing that with all of different people who did not know necessarily about themselves. So like they were like islands kind of thing. And then I thought to myself, why don't we provide a space where we can connect those islands, where we can collectively share those experiences through conversation, through back and forth, through co-creating and co-learning together. So with the outcome of those conversations, we can turn them into something positive, bringing that energy, that light, right? And eventually I realized that right now, if you look into online spaces, we lost that sense of community. We lost that sense of getting people together to discuss, to convene,
It's a
to share
competition.
something.
It becomes a
Right.
competition.
Exactly. Even with people, when people tell me like, yeah, but we have got LinkedIn, I say like, gosh, LinkedIn is the worst of those places in terms of competition. It's like everyone is competing for everyone's attention. Like, look how fabulous I am. Please hire me. Look at my selfie. What? Excuse me? No, thank you. Like, what you're good at, show me the money where you need to show me the money, right? And I felt that we were missing that, community space where people could come together in a protected, safe environment so we could get rid of the assholes because we don't need the assholes and focus on the conversations of how we could advance the topic of how we could improve the workplace as a result of the interactions that we were having, right? And then at one point in time, I realized that when we were shaping that, with my partner, Catherine Barnard, we realized that it was actually much larger than just talking about the workplace, that we were collaborating when we were reframing how we wanted to live our lives as a society, how we no longer needed to be in a big metropolis to be our best selves, how we could actually go and repopulate areas that, they were pretty much empty because everyone flocked to the cities, right? How we could change the way certain perceptions around how you work, but also how you live, right? How one of the things that I keep talking about is that focus on local communities, right? Like, in your own neighborhood, do you know the people that you work with, that you live with, that you bump into when you go to the bakery, when you go to your coffee shop, and no, I have to go to work. And we have lost that, right? So Asynco, which is the name of the community itself, tries to
It's
fill
called
those
asynco.
async, yeah, like an asynchronous community, because one of the things that I try to promote with that distributed work is that for the first time ever in history, at least in recent history, it's not technology that is helping us reshape the way we actually work. It's actually the notion of no longer having an office, right? As a result of the pandemic, we understood that remote work is no longer a dirty word. It's not when you do your laundry. It's not when you nibble something from the fridge. It's not when you take your kids to school. It's actually when you do work
Right.
as one other facet of your life
Right.
that you blend in with your life,
Literally
which
in
means,
space and time.
right, which means that every other concept that we had about going to a physical space to do work disappears, because then work becomes a mental state.
Mhm.
You work when you need to work, not when someone demands that you need to work, right? And the thing is, and this is what is key, and I think that that also comes from Carmen's point of view, is that when we are told that we need to work with each other, collaborating, we don't know how to do it effectively, especially when we're not collocated face to face, right? And especially when we're not doing it through video conferencing, so real time collaboration and communication. So that
So does
that
Asynco
whole
like
other
fix this? I mean, how does Asynco
we
fix this?
we address it well. Async addresses the opportunity for us to start thinking about how do we do nonlinear work, asynchronous work, using technology as an enabler for us to not just collaborate, but also to learn together and to relate to one another,
And
right?
you get, I mean, so I've been also like you before the pandemic. I was
Mm-hmm.
working remotely for about 10 years, not as many years, but um, I noticed that there's ways to shape human interactions
Right.
so that that works out. It's not really about the technology as much, but the technology can be designed so that it shapes human interactions in ways that allow collaboration. Is there something about the technology that does that?
No. And the
Okay.
reason for that, and this is actually an excellent point, is how much that technology, that set of tools, is driven our behaviors to work and behave exactly like we have been doing all along,
Oh
right?
God.
Because
So it's just like
when,
yet another, yeah,
right,
right.
give me an example, right? So when people think about hybrid work, the first thing that comes to mind is meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting,
Yep, that's
which
all
you
I'm doing.
basically you're basically perpetuating the behavior when you were in the office of going from one meeting room to another like a chicken without head because you were always late for
Well,
the
and it's
meeting,
also a lack
right?
of trust. It suggests that
Right,
people have to see
right.
you on screen or you don't do
Exactly.
work.
And that's the key question behind Asynco is how do we provide an environment where we can trust each other to do our best work without seeing each other's ass every
Yeah,
day,
yeah,
right?
awesome.
And how do we do it? What kind of skills we need to build? What kind of tools we need to provoke for that to happen, which are not there right now, right? And in the sense of there are a lot of tools out there, a lot of digital tools, but they perpetuate pretty much the same use cases that we have been doing forever, which is meetings, email, file sharing, and private chatting. Like, please bring me something new that we don't know from the last 50 years.
I
Right?
was, Luis, I
Go
was
ahead, Carmen.
reading through the chat on the distributed work, I think it was called, on Asynco, and somebody
Mm-hmm.
had this fantastic statistic that, the Microsoft suite of offices that actually has built into it all of these real-time collaboration tools, but that people don't use it that way. And
Right.
that only that 95% of people, some kind of study who use Microsoft use it in this old kind of hierarchical, send emails to each other sort of
Right. And
way.
and
And
and there is a reason for that. For that point, it's exactly what Julia mentioned, is
yeah,
lack of trust.
lack
Yeah,
of
It's
trust,
it's
right?
like it's like there are certain norms and behaviors from certain groups that demand that you work this way because
Yes,
you are giving a very powerful tool that allows you to do many things. But I want you to continue doing just this
right,
piece of
right,
task
right.
there because I don't
oh,
trust
just think of
the work that you do,
the
right?
wasted gifts that are packed inside of
Absolutely.
people, the
Abs
wasted
oh,
light that could come
so
out
there
and
is so
change
much
everything.
wasted light. I agree.
Yeah,
I
that,
know, I
yeah,
know, and that's the opportunity where we have with the efforts like, for instance, Async in this case, but also with the whole notion around community and with the whole notion around thinking that we need to regain our personal agency by being able to identify our sources of light and focus on them and
yes,
amplify them, right?
Right.
yes,
And
Yeah.
we will be able to do that by being part of community. So also part of the mission from Async is to basically tell people that a community is not an audience. It's not
yes,
like one or two people creating content and then some people paying for it and then keep sustaining that
Yeah,
model, which can
right,
be from an entertainment point of view, but community truly is about co-creating the future together
right,
today.
right, right.
yeah.
Co-creating. co-creating,
Yes, I think we
and
should.
co-learning together.
I think we should take that co-creating and working with the light into our dancing, because I know what song Luis already told me his dancing song. So no one's getting away with not dancing. So
Before we should dance, can I just say one little story very quickly that Luis reminded me of?
Go
of
ahead.
course, I have to look up
About
the
the
song
competitive
too.
nature of work. Many years ago, 40 years ago, I was, had 3 or 4 years of experience at CIA. There was a young, very smart man working with me, Steve, and another person who was slower to understand the expectations of being an analyst at CIA. The young man, Steve, got it right away. So I would work with the slower person, trying to improve his analytic work, et cetera, et cetera. And one day, Steve asked me, he said, "Why are you helping him with that work? Because it doesn't help us if you make his work better. It'll just take away opportunities from us." And I was,
Wow,
I mean,
that's appalling.
he didn't censor it. He didn't think there was anything wrong with what he was saying. He just said it. And I was like, oh my goodness.
You need work,
So,
boy.
huh? What?
You need
Did you
work, I would have
school
said,
him?
yeah.
I hope you schooled him, but
I
you're on the
know
same team.
I didn't. I'm not confrontational, which is a weakness, I guess. But well, at least sometimes it can be a weakness. And I just kind of looked at him. I may have said, because I think it's the right thing to do, I may have said that, but I'm not sure I did. I must have said something,
Ugh.
I think,
But don't you
go ahead.
think that that idea underlines the mindset of certain people of trying to thrive in the midst of a scarcity as opposed
Of
to
course, yeah,
abundance?
no,
Yes,
right?
yes. I
yes.
hadn't thought of that
And
until you talked, Luis.
and that's it's just, to me, it's crazy how, again, on that knowledge work exercise, like, we can, your example, your story, Carmen, is what I mentioned earlier on. You have the knowledge, someone requires it, is inhumanly possible not to help
Yes,
that
for
person,
me,
and
it
that's
was
eventually
like,
what you did, right? It's a
yes.
giving,
Actually,
and I
that's why
think
we
that,
struggle so much with saying no. When people have a hard time saying no, it's
right,
because the
right,
impulse is
Is
to
to
say
say yes, to
yes.
see if
right.
you can be helpful, right?
And especially if you are helpful, then yeah, I can help you with that, right?
Yeah.
But I think that deep inside we know that part of the reason why we cannot say no to that is because we have that potential. I mean, we have that thought that potentially in the near future, X amount of time later, I may be on that need to receive information from you, right?
Yeah,
So is that reciprocity, and not necessarily that you are, yeah, I helped you today, so you can help me tomorrow. No. It's like, I helped you today because you're part of my community, you're part of my network, and as a result of me helping you, we're going to become better collectively. And I think that we don't have enough of that because we keep thinking of knowledge as a scarce resource as opposed to the abundance, right? And how, as a result of that idea exchange, we become better humans, right?
yes.
At what we do.
We
That's what
become
we do.
more humane, to use your words.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes,
Yes, please.
yes.
Yes, please. More humane. Yes.
More
There you go.
humane. I
When
want to
we
change the name of your platform to Async Humane.
I'll take that feedback and feed it back into the community. And actually, there have been folks already, because this all ties in a little bit to the whole notion of now the hype that we have at the moment with all of these generative AI tools, and especially as they come into the workplace, right? Where some people feel that we're actually, seeing some starting points about being dehumanized in a way, right? And turning ourselves into, again, the cogs of the machine and everything else, and how some people are fighting that because they want to remain, without human work, human labor, right? And I think it is a fascinating topic as to what's the limit, what's the blend.
Yeah,
So how can we still be humane in the context of the tools that will allow us to become more humane as opposed to become more machine-like?
that's right.
But
How do
that's
we send it in that
perhaps
direction? Another time.
right. Yes, for
Another
another
time.
topic. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Luis, I knew you would be. It was a great you are a great conversationalist.
But you're
Thank you
going
for
to
that.
dance with us, right?
Yes,
You're
look
going
at
to
that.
dance with us. Yes, you
Do
are.
I?
It was your
No.
song. I
Oh my God,
yes,
how
you
embarrassing
are.
is this?
But
Yeah,
the
well,
great thing is that your background is blurred. So if you back up enough, we'll just see this weird blurred
see
shadow.
this movement. Oh, can I do that? Okay.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, you should do that because it'll make
do
you
I
less
need,
shy.
so do you mean that I need to stand up and everything? No,
Yes,
it's
like people, you know how people dance? I mean, can you stand up? You don't have to stand up if you can't stand up, but if you can
it's
stand
that
up,
I will be showing all of the boxes that I have got from the house move that I did recently. So
oh
I don't
yeah,
want to.
that's no one has boxes when they move. So I think everyone's going to be a little
Oh,
freaked out
good.
by your
'Cause
boxes.
I'm still in my sweatpants here because you know what? It's really cold.
All right, we are
Okay, so you're gonna play
essentially
it or we each
essentially
are playing it?
tonight with Tina Turner and David Bowie. I'm going to mute myself and we'll do 3, 2, 1.
Okay, hold on a second. I need to
Yeah,
get,
you should all play it yourself because otherwise.
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah, and mute. Play it ourselves and mute.
it's-
Okay,
so
so,
one screen for 3, 2, 1.
okay.
So hang on, let me just.
All right, get past the ads and give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Thumbs up. Okay. All right, watch the screen for 3, 2, 1. Are you ready?